Hi, my name is Kristin. This is Kristin Kraves Books. So I don't know where April has gone, but here I am with my May 2022 most anticipated releases, and I was lucky enough to have arcs of a few of these, so if I have read them, I will let you know. We have a lot of great romances and books from all genres, so we will start with May 3rd, and the first book is a fun one. It is the second book in the Meant to Be series, and this is by the book by Jasmine Guillory. The first book was If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy, so each of the books in the series is written by a different author and inspired by a different Disney princess, which I think is so fun. So obviously the first one was Cinderella inspired. This one is Beauty and the Beast, which historically I don't love Beauty and the Beast retellings just because of the nature of their relationship there, even though I do love the original Disney movie. But because this is a contemporary romance, I don't think we're going to get into the darker themes of Beauty and the Beast. And with the first one, it was very lightly inspired as well. So I think it'll just be more the dynamics of the relationship. I think it'll be hate to love. And from what I know, we are following a woman who has been an editorial assistant for a long time. She wants to move up the ranks, and she hears that a really popular author is having a hard time submitting his manuscript on time, and he's known to be moody and a bit of a curmudgeon, but she thinks that if she can inspire him and encourage him to finish his manuscript, that will help her in her career. So she goes to his house and she does that, and obviously they don't get along at first, and then romance happens from there. So that sounds like an adorable book. I do like the Wedding Date series from Jasmine Guillory, but it'll be interesting to read something that's not part of that series, so we'll see about that. I love the first one. It's just a fun, these are just fun books, especially if you loved Disney movies growing up. The next one is another romance from an author who's so popular and I've never read from before, and this is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. And I have heard a lot of people talk about Emily Henry's books. I know Beach Read is popular, but then people get such mixed reviews, and I feel like I've heard the premise so many times that it feels like I've read it, so I've just never picked it up. But this is the one that can probably inspire me to finally do that. And actually it kind of sounds like it has a similar premise to By the Book, in that we are following a literary agent in this case, and I think her and her sister go on vacation and she's trying to find love, so she's like seeking out different romance tropes from movies, but she keeps running into a different editor that she doesn't get along with, but they keep running into each other, and maybe it's fate. So hate to love as well. So similar themes between those two, so it'd be interesting to compare them. But I think this is a lot of people's favorite Emily Henry book so far. So people who love her are saying this is their favorite, so that gets me excited about it. This next one I actually have an ALC of, and I hope to listen to it soon. So look out for my next recent reads video where I will probably be talking about this one. And this is I Kissed Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston, which I know is a highly anticipated book as well. And I didn't realize there was a mystery in this. So we're following this is YA, so we're following a young teenager who moved to this town, and she's having a hard time fitting in. It's a more conservative town, and she ends up one night kissing Shara Wheeler, and then the next day Shara goes missing, and she teams up with some of Shara's ex-boyfriends or some people that she's been romantically involved with in the past to try and find out what happened to Shara, and there's a bit of a puzzle. So that sounds different and unique, and not like I've read One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I haven't read Red, White, and Royal Blue, so we'll see. I didn't love One Last Stop, but I have high hopes for this one. And then surprise, surprise, another romance, and it's a foodie romance, which I love. If you've been around my channel for a while, you know that. And this trope could be overdone, but I never get tired of it. I know a lot of people are probably gonna get sick of it because there are so many of these coming out lately, but I'm so here for it. And this is Chef's Kiss by TJ Alexander. Once again, this takes place, it's like a hate to love romance that takes place on the set of a cooking show. And I think it's like a viral video that happens, and one of the characters actually comes out as non-binary, and sparks just fly. I don't know, I'm here for foodie romances. I love good food descriptions. I love any romance where it's like on a set of a cooking show, or there's somebody becomes famous in some way. I just live for that stuff, and I think this is a debut, so I'm highly looking forward to that. This next one is also a book by a popular author who I've never read from, and that is Book of Night by Holly Black. And I have a feeling I will be getting a gorgeous edition coming my way soon, so that's really the only reason I have this on my TBR. But when I read through the premise, it actually does sound intriguing. I know it's about manipulating shadows and how you kind of have two lives, your life and your shadow has its own life, and you can manipulate people through their shadows. I don't know, that sounds interesting to me. This is Holly Black's first adult novel, I believe, so that'll be intriguing. And I know a lot of people love like her Quill Prince series, so we'll see how I feel about Holly Black. But I do know that I'm probably having a nice edition of that coming, so I wanted to add it to my TBR. I will read anything that Elizabeth Acevedo does, so I'm really excited about Inheritance, and this is actually a visual poem, and the illustrations are done by Andrea Pippins, and you can just tell by the cover that the illustrations are going to be stunning. And I'm just going to read you the opening. It says, "They tell me to fix my hair, and by fix they mean strain, they mean whiten. But how do you fix the shipwrecked history of hair?" So I think that could be a powerful one. I know that if you've read The Poet X, you know how amazing Elizabeth Acevedo is when it comes to writing verse, and I think this is to be a beautiful book in general. Now, I don't love the original Peter Pan story, but I am drawn to the retellings for some reason, and this one really intrigued me, and it's called Darling Girl by Liz Mikulski, and this is actually an adult novel, which is weird and different for a Peter Pan retelling. And we're following Wendy's granddaughter, I believe, and she actually has a child with Peter Pan, and Peter Pan comes and steals their child at some point, so it's kind of dark in that way. And you know, Peter Pan, he's not a great character, so I'm curious to see how that all plays out. It seems like a unique take on the original Peter Pan story. Next is one I've talked about a few times and I'm in the middle of right now, and that is The Change by Kristin Miller. The change actually refers to menopause, and we're following 3 women who are going through menopause who have discovered that they are now coming into a power or a gift because of their menopause. So it's a fantasy thriller, and they find the body of a teenager who the police have kind of just written off as a drug addict, and they don't investigate any further into her death. But these 3 women come together to find out the truth. So I'm really into this already. The writing's really good. I'm really into these characters. I think it's a unique story, so highly recommend this so far. But again, I will talk about more of it. I just dropped my tabs. I will talk more about this in my next recent reads video. This next one just sounds so adorable. It's called Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. And this is being compared to A Man Called Ove. And it is about the relationship between like a widowed woman, her husband just passed away, and a octopus named Marcellus on an aquarium. And many years earlier, this woman's son died at sea. And I think Marcellus, the octopus, actually has a point of view, and he kind of knows what happened to her son and is trying to communicate that to her. But he doesn't really connect to humans because he's in captivity. But there's something special about their bond. So that sounds really different and out there, but I could really love something like that. I think that has a lot of potential. I cannot believe we are still on May 3rd, but the next one is called The Haciendas by Isabel Cañas, and this is being compared to Mexican Gothic and Rebecca, and just reading the premise, you definitely get that vibe. Our main character, Beatrice, her father was murdered, and she ends up marrying this man, and she thinks it's going to give her a life of stability. She moves into his house, he goes away for work, and she is starting to hear noises, hear things at night, and nobody around her believes her, and she ends up forming like a friendship with a priest who actually believes her and is going to help her. So I think it's going to be very gothic. I love gothic novels and atmospheric and spooky, so I love that trope. Anything that has that Rebecca, Jane Eyre, Mexican Gothic vibe, I will always try. So this next one, honestly, it was the cover that caught my eye at first. The description is a little out there. I've read it a few times and still don't quite get it. But it's metafiction, like a book within a book. And I'm just going to read you part of the synopsis because I think that will explain it better to you than I can. It says it brilliantly puts the story of these characters into conversation with other accounts and in tension with the life and perspective of a young woman bent on disentangling fact from fiction. The result is a novel that becomes more exhilarating and profound with each new layer and revelation. So I think it's just many layers. It's going to be something unique. I like unique storytelling. So I have high hopes from this one, and it's already getting some buzz. Then we actually have a sequel to one of the first physical arcs that I ever received, and this is The Bookwoman's Daughter by Kim Michelle Richardson. And the first book was The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek, which I actually was so surprised by and loved. This is historical fiction following the last Kentucky Blue. She actually had blue skin. I knew nothing about this part of history until this book, so I did a lot of Googling. So be prepared when you read that book that you're gonna be on the internet a lot. And she actually gets a job delivering library books and books to readers in her community, and it was a very difficult thing to do at the time, but she recognized the importance of reading, and she faced a lot of backlash just because of the nature of who she is. And it was a tough read in a lot of ways, but hopeful by the end. And this follows her daughter, and I believe actually in this story, I don't want to say too much because it is a sequel, but I believe that her father and mother are imprisoned and she takes over her mom's job. So yeah, if you're a book lover, it's definitely worth checking out. This next one I just found out about, but I'm so excited for it, and it's called When We Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. And I just have to read you the opening paragraph of the synopsis. It says, learn about the mass dragoning of 1955 in which 300,000 women spontaneously transformed into dragons and changed the world. So that sounds so unique and fun, and we're following a character whose aunt was part of this mass dragoning. She turned into a dragon and disappeared, and now her family never talks about her aunt. It's like she never happened, she never existed, and everybody's so hush-hush about this whole experience, and obviously this young girl wants to discover what happened here. So I think this could be really, really cool. Okay, we're finally on May 10th, and the first one I have is Breathe and Count Back from 10 by Natalia Sylvester. And this is following a disabled young girl who is doing physiotherapy, so swimming is great for that, and she spends a lot of time in the water, and she wants to audition to be like a professional mermaid at a place called Mermaid Cove. So I think she does that, and then discovers that maybe her parents were lying to her about the truth about her body. So I think this could be a really powerful book. I'm really looking forward to that one. That is YA. The next one I was just approved for an ALC of from NetGalley, and this is Siren Queen by Nevo, and it says it was magic in every word. It was a kind of magic. So this is an exhilarating exploration of an outsider achieving stardom on her own terms in a fantastical Hollywood where the monsters are real and the magic of the silver screen illuminates every page. So I know a lot of us love like old Hollywood type books, and there are actually real monsters in this, so highly looking forward to it. Moving on to May 17th, and actually I have 2 celebrity memoirs on my list. I don't read a ton of celebrity memoirs, but there are some that really intrigue me. And this first one is We Were Dreamers, an immigrant superhero origin story by Simu Liu, who actually went to the same university as me here in Canada at the same time. And I'm pissed I never met him. So that's a whole different tirade. But yeah, this sounds so good, and I just love how he just suddenly blew up in fame from that movie for being in the Marvel Universe, and he seems so humble and grateful, and I love how his family is everywhere with him. He's just so sweet, so I'm really happy for him, and it'll be interesting to hear his story. Here's another interesting one. It's called The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah, and I am trying to get more into fantasy, and this one really intrigued me, and it is inspired by 1001 Nights, and actually it says it weaves a gripping tale of legendary smuggler, a cowardly prince, and a dangerous quest across the desert to find a legendary magical lamp. And I've been hearing great things about that one already. It sounds like the kind of fantasy I love. I've really learned about myself that I love any kind of retelling when it comes to my fantasies. So, and I don't think I've ever read anything that was inspired by 1001 Nights, so I'm looking forward to that. Then we have another romance, one that I know a lot of people are going to be looking forward to, and this is the newest one from Christina Lauren, and that is Something Wilder. And this one sounds really out there. It's following this young girl whose father had a ranch, and I think she had like an estranged relationship with her father, but her father passes away and she wants to save the ranch, and she does kind of treasure hunt tours with tourists, and she ends up going with this guy that she knows. I think it's a second chance romance maybe, and it turns out maybe the treasure isn't so fake. So I don't know, that sounds a little different for Christina Lauren, but I'm looking forward to giving that one a try, even though their books are a little hit and miss for me. Okay, here's the other celebrity memoir. It's Mean Baby by Selma Blair, who I know a lot of us adore. And actually, I was reading the synopsis. It's called Mean Baby because that's how she was described growing up. She was always like had a mean face on, and they said she did a lot of cruel things as a kid, and that was always kind of how she was stigmatized. And she talks a lot about the trauma from her childhood, and then coming up as an actress, and then her diagnosis with multiple sclerosis. So I think this will be an interesting memoir, and I'm sure she narrates it herself, but it actually says a memoir of growing up. So I appreciate that we're gonna get a lot of her formative years. And now moving on to May 24th, and this cover is just an abomination, I am sorry, but this is A Cruel and Fated Life by Ashley Shuttleworth, and I love the first book. Actually, let me grab it so you can see the difference in the covers. One second. How gorgeous is this cover? And this is an ARC, so I bet the finished copy is even prettier. Look at this, and then look at this. And that's with the change, I think they changed the lighting of it a little bit because it was too bright originally, but no, this is not a good cover. But that is a entirely different topic, and I still want to read the book. I just think I will listen to the audiobook, to be honest with you. And this is a fae story, which is not normally my thing, but I liked the setup of this, and I can't say too much. This is a sequel, but in the first one it's actually like set mostly in Toronto, which I love. There's sapphic love stories, and there's a lot of different characters, and I think it can be confusing, but it's worth reading. So I'm cautiously optimistic about this one. Next up is one that I am lucky enough to have already read, and that is You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Kwakiemezi, and this is Kwakiemezi's first romance. We talk about them all the time. I just filmed and posted my recent reads, where the first book I talk about in that video is this book, so if you want to know more of my thoughts, definitely check that video out. But I love this. It's going to be a very divisive book, but I thought it was really good, and we're following Faye, whose husband passed away 5 years ago, and she's just ready to put herself out there, but she's not looking for commitment. And she is an artist, and she does use her art to help her grieve. And I don't even want to say what the relationship is, the romance turns out to be, because it doesn't happen till later on in the book, and that's kind of the shot. Like, that's what's going to be complicated about it for me. I think it's best to go into this one knowing as little as possible, and just knowing that it's a Kwakiemezi. They're a beyond talented writer, and you should just trust them, that they know what they're doing, that they're going to take you on a journey, because they really do with this one. Next is another memoir, and this is Brace for Impact by Gabe Monsanti. And first of all, this cover is just so cool. And this is following her story, trying to come to some self-acceptance growing up and discovering a love for the roller derby. And then she gets like a really terrible injury, and she realizes that she only not has to heal physically, but emotionally and mentally as well, and we follow her on that journey. And that's just kind of the kind of memoir I am drawn to. And I do, as I say in my fiction, I love memoirs as well, where somebody has a passion, and how devastating it is for somebody who loves something so much that it injures them and they can't do it anymore. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, finally we're on May 31st, and the first one is another sequel. This is The Merciless Ones by Namina Forna, who wrote The Gilded Ones, which was the first book, and that was quite a jarring book, quite graphic, and I've been highly anticipating this book for quite a while, and I think it's going to be quite different than the first one, so looking forward to that. The next one is Deep in Providence by Rhys M. Nielsen, and this is a witchy story, which you know I'm going to love, and we're following these 4 girls who practice magic, and then one of them ends up being killed by a drunk driver, and these girls can feel that her spirit is still around, and they decide to try and raise her from the dead. So sounds interesting. I love a witchy book. This sounds like it's going to deal a lot with grief, so we'll see. This next one looks like a lot of fun, even though it is like a horror. It's called Summer's Edge by Dana Mel, and this is being compared to I Know What You Did Last Summer meets Haunting on Hill House. So it's again, this very much I Know What You Did Last Summer, where something happened the summer before where this girl was killed in a house fire, and the friend group decided to get back together. This house has been rebuilt, and kind of celebrate her life. And then they all get together in this house. Things start happening, secrets come out. Maybe she was actually murdered. So it sounds kind of campy and fun for, you know what I mean, for that kind of thriller. So I think this could be a good beach read. The next one is another one that I read and listened to, and it's actually narrated by Julia Whalen. So if you're a fan of hers, I highly recommend this on audiobook. And this is Yerba Buena by Nina LaCour, who I've never read from before, but she has written a lot of popular YA romance. And this is her first adult novel. And it's being billed as a romance, but I wouldn't say it's a romance. There is like a sapphic love story in here. It is a big part of the book, but it's mostly about these 2 women grappling with their past and their trauma. Both of their families have addiction histories, and they're trying to work through that, and it makes their relationship more complicated, but they're also very much drawn to each other. I thought it felt really real and authentic. I love this, and if you want to hear more of my thoughts, again, it'll be in my last recent reads video. This next one just sounds so adorable. It's called A Little Bit Country by Brian D. Kennedy, and it sounds like a love story that takes place in Dollywood. Of course, in the book it's called something else, but it's Dollywood, and one of the characters performs and sings in Dollywood, and the other one, his grandmother, was like Dolly's, different character's name obviously, but would be like Dolly's enemy. They had a falling out, and nobody likes this character anymore. So it's like kind of shameful that he would even be at Dollywood, but he ends up there somehow, and they have a connection, and it's a romance. So that just sounds like a blast to me. This next one I have read, and again, it was in my last recent reads video, but this is a YA contemporary romance called Love Radio by Ebony Liddell, and I think it's important to know going into this that there is a trigger for attempted sexual assault, and that is something that the main character deals with quite a bit. It has caused her to draw into herself and distance herself from others, and I think that's important to know. And that is Danny, and she's become cynical about love, and it's their senior year of college, so that's a big part of the story as well. And then Prince is has always had a crush on Danny, and he is a radio talk show host where he gives love advice, which is kind of hysterical, love advice from a teenager, but it was still funny. I liked getting those little snippets of his advice on the radio, so that was fun. And Danny is a writer, and she writes to her favorite authors as a way to heal. So she writes to Toni Morrison, Roxane Gay, and I just love that as well. So he tells her that he can make her fall in love with him in 3 dates. So we follow those 3 dates, but it really tackles some heavier topics. I thought it was really respectful and well done, and I highly, highly recommend it. Okay, one more, another YA romance, My Mechanical Romance by Alexine Farrell Felmuth. And this is like a STEM romance. I think this girl ends up on the robotics team, and she ends up having like a hate to love romance with the captain of the team. He takes it way more seriously than she does, so they have a lot of conflict between them, but that sounds adorable. I'm here for it. I love the title so much. And then I have 3 honorable mentions. I just thought I would mention these because there are sequels to books a lot of people are probably looking forward to, but I haven't read the other books, but I just want to bring them to your attention. So the first one is Family of Liars by E. Lockhart, and this is actually a prequel to When We Were Liars, which I know has a kind of resurgence lately because of book talk. So if you like that one, this is a prequel to that. And then Tokyo Dreaming by Miko Jean. This is a sequel to Tokyo Ever After, which I do really want to read. So if you've read and loved that, that's coming out. And then Seasonal Fears by Sharon McGuire, which is a sequel to Middle Game, which I know is a lot of people's like favorite book of all time. And now that I'm trying to figure out what kind of fantasy I like, I feel like that could fit in with my kind of fantasy. So I might try that in the future. And I already do know that I like Sharon McGuire. I like the Wayward Children series, so I could be persuaded to try that. So that is a lot. I'm losing my voice. There are so many more books coming out in May as well. So if I missed any, let me know in the comments down below which one you're most excited to read and your thoughts on any of these. And I hope that your April is going well, and thanks again for your support. I appreciate it so much. I will talk to you again soon. Bye for now.